Hi everybody, my name is Mark, and this is a video on what to look for in a game review. So why is this important and how is it important? Well, I don't trust a lot of game reviews. I do buy a great deal of games. I got like hundreds of them on my Steam account, many that I pay for. And I have among them a lot of games that I regret buying. I thought they were actually bad purchases. I fell in for the hype of the review. And I just feel like there's a growing disparity, or a very large disparity, between what journalists think about games and what gamers actually think about games. So it's like if you were to look at something like, say, Gone Home, or a lot of indie games, especially in the indie scene, you'll notice that there's a big disparity between how gamers would review a game, like what the score they would put on Metacritic, right? So you'll look at the gamer score versus the journalist score. There's a huge disparity, and I think there's a lot of conflicts of interest as of late. You know, you've probably heard about the Quingate. There's a lot of these conflicts of interest. There's nepotism, and there's things like review embargoes. So a lot of times you'll have companies which will place an embargo on a journalist, like review embargoes. So that means that if you break the review embargo, if you were to release a review before the release date of the game, then that company will not give you any demo copies, and you'll just be like cut out from events and that kind of thing. And that's another huge conflict of interest, right? It's one thing. It's like one form of conflict of interest, like the positive type, and positive does not mean good, right? It means paying off people and bribing them, and then the other one is discouraging them and threatening them from performing reasonable reviews. So the other, and finally, a lot of times I find that a lot of these reviews they provide unquantifiable analyses. They're not even analyzing it, and you have a lot of puff pieces and just I just see a lot of reviews that don't have any substance, and they don't quantify the game. And so as a result, it's really difficult for us to tell the bad games from the good games purely through the reviews. In the end, I wind up having to suss out video game Let's Plays. I look at Let's Plays. I look at videos of game, like just gameplay, and they're not reviews. And I just want to see how the game plays. And that's what I wind up doing, because the reviews are they're no good. So, and then there's another problem in that you have a lot of these. There's a huge prevalence of non-games. And by that, let's just look at the modern art scene, right? So the modern art scene, you've got some art which actually takes skill. You look at the art of the Renaissance era. You see just really good comic book art sometimes, or really good video game art, production art that obviously takes a lot of skill and is very pleasing to the eye. And then you've got the modern art movement, where sometimes you have some artists that are good, and then you have a lot of charlatans, a lot of fakers, people who just they just splash paint on a canvas, and they don't have any skill, and they just kind of do whatever the hell they want. And then you've got people who think if they like this kind of artwork, this art that only a few people understand, and it's ahead of its time, and it's avant-garde and all that they're more sophisticated, right? Suppose if you like a non-game, if you like one of these art games, then that makes you look sophisticated. You're in with the in crowd, and you can hang out with the other indie hipsters at Starbucks and wear your horn-rimmed glasses and just I'm so sick of it. And even I'm also I'm an artist as well as a game developer, and it's like I got really tired of seeing a lot of really crappy, bad art that is lauded as being avant-garde and ahead of its time. And now I said, well, I also got into games, and yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. So you'll have a lot of this very pretentious stuff that gets thrown around, and they're pretending to be games. And if you like these things, then you're in with the in crowd, and you're cool and hip and sophisticated, and well, fuck you. So And maybe not all of these non-games are bad. I mean, sometimes I think that it's also a miscategorization, right? So I mean, I can look at a game like, say, Journey, right? And I don't even think it's a game. I look at a game like Journey or Gone Home, and sure, they put in some effort, and sure, it may have a good story or whatever. I haven't played it myself. I've just seen a bunch of playthroughs. But I would say that a game like Journey, you just go through and you there's no losing, there's no dying. I don't think of it as a game because there's no challenge. Like, I'm going to go over the criteria of what is a game, what isn't a game, how do we categorize things in games. And I say that it doesn't mean it's bad. It's a bad experience. I'll even look at a game like, say, the first Mass Effect. And the thing is this, is that if I go to a movie theater and the light dim and the curtains open and I start seeing, a book being projected on the screen and then someone's turning the pages, and that's the whole movie, is just it's presented as a book. I mean, I went to the fucking theater to watch a movie, not read a book. Okay, like, I don't care how good your book is. All right, I pay to see the movie. I want to see a movie, right? It's not. It could be the best book in the fucking world. But if I get a bait and switch, right? I paid to see a movie and I'm not getting a movie, I'm not going to be satisfied. If I open up, if I paid to get a box of like Cinnamon Toast Crunch and I open it up and it's Special K, okay, I don't have anything against Special K. I think it's great in Rice Krispies, right? But I mean, if it's or Rice Krispies, like I like those, right? It's great as a Rice Krispies card, fine. But I paid for a box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and I'm going to be very unhappy if I didn't get what I paid for. If the wrong label's on it and it's miscategorized, fuck you, all right? Because I'm just so sick of people trying to sell to a crowd that, by mislabeling it, the bait and switch, and I'm sorry. Like, you have taken my money, and I feel like I have been defrauded, all right? I don't care how good the thing is, right? But I don't like this, it's very disingenuous. Bad business. Don't fucking do it, please. Do not fucking do it. All right. So let's talk about quantifiable game analysis. And I just want you all to know that this is just a starting point. It is, and I say it's just a starting point, so obviously subject to change. People will probably have their own things to add and subtract to it. But I feel that definition is it's necessary for meaningful comparison and categorization. And so we want to avoid the miscategorization. We don't want non-games winding up in the game bin. And sites that have, that purport to say that, hey, they're about games sites. Well, fine. I mean, then have a section. Please do not put these things, together. Like, it's just like you wouldn't put your, don't put the historical, autobiography in the porn section, and vice versa. Okay, I mean, the people who want porn, right, do not want to buy a porn and then find like a historical autobiography, and people who want to look through the historical autobiographies will be equally unhappy to find porn in there. So so what's in it for you? Just no more regretted purchases. If you can understand and judge a review and judge a game, you won't regret your purchases. You won't be going horrible, and just falling for the shiny game reviews. Okay, so I want people to be able to discern review from hype. So what's in it for me? Because obviously I have my own ulterior motives. Well, I'm just tired of competing for attention with overhyped games. And so if people can properly judge these things, and start, if they see an overhyped non-game and they can strike it down for, what it is, then I don't have to compete with that. I would like to compete with good games and, have my games, categorized with the other good games, and just not have them all thrown into this fucking bin of mediocrity. So, on to it. Is it even a game? Let's look at the categorization. Is it even a game? And I say, well, a game, does it have goals? Does it have rules and mechanics? Does it have interaction, influence, and agency? Okay, and so I'm going to start talking like, if I look at a game like Gone Home, right? It's like people say, oh, it's interactive. And I'm like, well, you don't really have any influence or agency over how the thing turns out. I mean, yeah, it changes the narrative, but in the end, I mean, the same events occur, right? It's like, instead of turning the pages of the novel, you're just going through and clicking on things in different order. You're not turning the pages of the novel. You're walking through and you're clicking things. The same thing can be said for Journey. If there's no influence, if whatever you're doing has jack shit, effect on the outcome, then I don't think it really counts as a game. And then games, I think, have to present, one of the following. They must present to you a challenge, and it's either a conflict. So the thing is that there's an active agent that you're fighting against, So there's that game. It's like, right? If you look at chess and checkers, there's an opponent. You have an opponent, and you're in conflict with them. Or at the very least, there's a thing that you're trying to do quickly, and maybe you can't mess the other guy up. But if you look at, say, Dance Dance Revolution, there's a competition, right? So it's two people. One has to do better than the other. That's a competition. And then you've got puzzles where, okay, there's no active agent, but, you're trying to solve the thing, and there's a solution to get through. So, I mean, there's puzzles. So I think there's different forms of challenge, and you've got conflict, competition, and puzzle. And when I look at something like like Gone Home, or if I look at a lot of these things, like many of these games don't even have that, right? There's no challenge. They don't have a challenge in terms of a conflict or competition, or they may not even have really decent puzzle elements. And so and you would have an uncertain outcome. I think it's necessary to have an uncertain outcome. You can lose in the game. You can have the bad outcome, the good outcome. And there's, I think it's important that you have an uncertain outcome. If it's always going to be the same thing, it's hard to really call it a game if your outcome's not uncertain. And then you also have a quantifiable outcome. I mean, that's the other thing. So, that, again, it's good outcome, bad outcome. You have a scoring at the end, a rank, grading, or win-lose condition. And okay, so and then fine. Let's say we pass all those criteria and it is a game, but is this game any good? Well, so we need some objective criteria, and then there will be later on some subjective criteria. But for objective criteria, these are things that are not influenced by how you feel or any kind of thing. Well, you've got how does your game present itself? Like, does it present a lot of engagement versus catharsis? Engagement means that the game engages you. It needs you to have a say. It needs you to do something, right? If it doesn't engage you, if it's just catharsis, right? Sometimes if you just have to do things and it's absolutely clear what you have to do, and you just do it, then you're just a monkey on an assembly line. It's work, right? And I guess it's not. There are some games which are actually not that bad at that. I mean, I look at Cookie Clicker, I look at Minecraft, I look at a lot of games that provide just catharsis. I mean, there's games will have a catharsis value to them, but then I look at some games which they have you like pulse pounding, and they get you thinking about everything you got to do, and they like if I look at Dota, like Dota is a game that's really engaging. In fact, it's too engaging for me. And the thing is, like, you're basically on this knife edge, right? When you play, it's this careful balancing, and you have to pay attention to everything, and like if you're not paying attention, one wrong slip, you're boned, all right? So I think games that really get you thinking, will have a lot of engagement. I look at another indie game called Teleglitch. Teleglitch is it's a roguelike. It's a roguelike game, and yeah, like, you can just one wrong slip, boom, you die. And you're boned. Like, it's highly engaging, and some games are actually too engaging. I can't. I can only play it for so long before I just get too stressed out, and I can't play it anymore. Right? It's too engaging. But I mean, I'd say that for people who are like hardcore gamers, right? You got casual gamers and hardcore gamers in this spectrum. There are some people who really, really thrive on that engagement, and so it's really good for them. So I say, what is the game presenting? Is it engaging? Is it presenting you engagement, or is it presenting you catharsis? I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I say it has something to do with the audience. It has an effect on who the game will appeal to. And then there's a variety of stimulation. And so I would say that in our brain we've got many different segments. And under analysis of like a positron, like if you do like a PET scan, a positron emission tomography, and when you're doing these different tasks, if you're doing math, or you're doing, you're playing an action game, or you're reading a book, or doing different activities just like sleep, you'll find that different parts of your brain light up. And so I find that a game that only taxes one part of your brain will eventually burn out that one part of your brain, and then you'll be like, ugh. But if the game has a variety of stimulation, sometimes it gives you a bit of a puzzle, sometimes it gives you action, sometimes it gives you a bit of this and a bit of, and it's like it's a variety. It's all these, then the different parts of your brain light up, and some parts of your brain get a chance to rest, other parts get a little bit of workout. And so I think a game that has you doing a lot of mental juggling and doing different things and throwing a variety of stimulation at you. Those games I find that are more addictive. They keep you like thinking. And plus there's like pacing, right? So they gotta put the gears on you, and then they gotta give you a rest, and they put the gears on you and then give you a rest, and it's a bit like torture in that sense. But yeah, I mean it's just, if you play things loud all the time, eventually you go deaf. And so I think it's important that games present to you a variety of stimulations so that you can keep playing them, right? Because I find there are times where it's just, okay, I've had enough of this game and I got to put it down. And that's a problem if it can't provide that variety of stimulation. Then there's solution resistance. And solution resistance is sometimes you find the one way to do it. Like I look at a game like 2048, it's a cell phone game. And that's a game where it's like, once you find this really good algorithm, there's no reason to do anything else. And or certain games, you'll play and you'll find like, oh, there's a particular set of gear that I need and a particular set of min-maxing that I do, and so you find one solution and that's it. You just keep doing that thing, and it becomes solution resist. It's lost. It doesn't have any solution resistance. And then what happens is your game suddenly turns into work, right? Because it's just, there's no more, I mean, there might be still some engagement, but there's no more thinking required, and the game is solution resistant. So that's is no longer solution resistant. That's a problem, right? Like I think it will detract from the durability of the game. So then we have things like the subjective criteria, and this is about how we feel about a game, because a game is, it's a medium, right? It's like it can be an art medium, and I think the games they'll have things like immersion, right? They'll get you immersed. They sometimes they're an escape, or sometimes they are there to kind of get you to think outside of the way you are right now. And a game that is immersive will make you think about the game itself, right? It pulls you in, and it becomes like an experience in of itself, right? A memorable experience in of itself, and the immersion just makes you think less about the fact that you're some pasty old fat guy, or in my case, like some fucking geek, who is sitting in a chair, right, and playing a game. I want to be in there, man. I want it to pull me in, versus something which is just a distraction and has distracting elements and things that kick me out, like bad controls and just like if I look at games that just have you doing finger gymnastics on the, that sounds vaguely sexual, but I mean finger gymnastics on the Xbox controller, and they're just really bad, and like sometimes it's like, why did they use 2 buttons when they could have done 1, right? Or it's like, why are these graphics glitching out and it's all crappy? Or it's like, oh, the sounds are horrible, and it's like they're playing the same sounds over and over and over and over again, and it gets really grating and repetitive, and it's just right? So I mean, there's things that if the game is free of distracting elements and things that kick you out of the game, that and it welcomes you in and immerses you, and it has great sound and visuals and just the experience of playing it, right? It's kind of hard to say what these things are, but in a review, if you're looking for a good game and a good review, you should feel that kind of immersion where it's like, oh man, I'm really like part of that world. I really feel like I'm a part of it, and that's super important. And then is the game memorable, or is it so I mean, if I look at a game like, say, I think it was Fear 3. Fear 3, my God, like that's a game where I played that with a friend, played co-op, and we played that game, and I think you can blitz through that thing in like 2 hours, and it's like we each played like different roles as like point man and Fettle, and we blitzed through that game. I mean, it was like 2 hours. All right, and you think, oh my God, only 2 hours of gameplay, but you know what? It's like a fucking roller coaster movie. It was memorable. That was a good game. I mean, I won't play it anymore because we played the hell out of it, but you know what? It was a short game, but it was memorable, and I enjoyed it. And it's like, yeah, it's like, I can certainly recommend this to other people. So, I mean, there's another thing where I talk about the value along, how much gameplay is in there, but sometimes, it's a memorable experience, and that will compensate for it. It's like, if you jumped out of a plane with a parachute, right? That's going to be a memorable, if not traumatic, experience, right? And yes, it costs a lot of money to go, to go parachuting out of an airplane, or like skydiving, right? Like that's expensive, but it's a memorable experience, right? And so I can say that there's still good value in that. Or is the game absolutely forgettable and banal, and like you just uninstalled it because you just didn't feel like playing it? And sometimes I find like there are games which like here, let's keep on going, right? There's the intensity of the game versus the endurance of the game. And so, I would, like, once again, I talk about Fear 3 as being a very intense game, right? Or some of my, like a game that gets you doing a lot of stuff. It's a very intense one, and sometimes it has a lot of endurance, right? So if I played, say, oh my God, like Borderlands 2, I have hundreds of hours logged on those, right? Terraria, oh my God, I've got hundreds of hours on that, and Minecraft and even Diablo 3, I've got lots of hours logged on those, right? Those have the endurance, and right, so like they have a large amount of play hours view in them, right? And sometimes I say that a game, I look at what's the value of that game, right? So I'll get to that later, but I mean, there's the intense game, and there's the endurance of the game, and so okay, I'll get to that other stuff later, right? And knowing that stuff, right, it's important to consider, who is this game really for? So I mean, the thing is that the game, you have to understand that sometimes in a review, the game may not be to your tastes, right? So when you look at all those prior criteria, understand, there's going to be certain things that you like about a game, that you want in a game, and understand that sometimes, you can say to yourself, this game would have been good for. I know I have a friend or someone who would love this game. It's not for me, but I know this game would have been great for someone else that I know, right? So consider who the game's for. It's easy to just say, this game was awesome, it's great, right? But it was awesome and great for me because it hit all the right notes with me. But I can imagine that it would be an acquired taste. I acquired it, like, look at a game like Dark Souls, right? Dark Souls, hardcore, badass game, super unforgiving. And you know what? It's for the hardcore players. So I played it. I can understand the appeal. It's not for me though, right? And so I'm not gonna slam it. I'm not gonna slam it. Same thing. I look at Mass Effect 1. I wanted a shooter, but it turned out to be more of a slow RPG, and you have to go around and there's not a whole lot of shooting, and I was incredibly disappointed because of the whole miscategorization thing. It was an RPG hiding as a shooter, right? And so the game really wasn't for me, and so consider who the game's for, and that's like really, before you slam a game or you super praise a game, always tag on, this game hit, this game rubbed all my joy spots. Or you can say, I know a person who's got joy spots that this game's gonna rub, woohoo, right? Consider that in your review. All right, so there's ancillary criteria, and these are the things that are neither objective nor subjective, and they're things that are outside of the game, right? So you got to ask yourself, what does it add to the genre? Is it a new genre in of itself? If it's a first-person shooter, of which there are gazillions, what does it add? Or is it just a fucking skin? Is it just a skin and like new sounds and new models? And I would look at like motherfucking Battlefield Hardcore, not Hardcore, Hardline. Battlefield Hardline versus Battlefield 4, they're the same fucking game, right? So it's like, doesn't add jack shit, right? It's got new skins and not really a whole lot in the way of mechanics. It's just, and I'm not saying it's a bad game, I just say it doesn't add anything. There's no innovation, right? So I mean, consider if the game does add anything. And you can have games that are good, like that have absolutely no innovation. They're just well executed, right? So I mean, that's what I can say is just consider, what does a game actually add to the genre? Then there's the software design, and this is, remember, computer games are software. Like they have software elements in them. Like if you look at Microsoft Excel or whatnot, like these are, or you look at a program like Photoshop, right? You use certain programs, you realize there's a workflow to them. If I were to compare, say, 3D Studio Max, 3ds Max versus Blender, or Maya versus Blender, right? It's like I look at Blender and think it is a catastrophe of software design, terrible user interface. And I know there's going to be a lot of people who are die-hard, Blender users who have been through with Blender, over and over, and through the ages. I'm not saying that Blender's not powerful. It's an amazingly powerful software. It looks beautiful, but you know what? Steep learning curve. They put if you're trying to get something done, everything is in 15 different places, and it's hard to tell how to do things from a first glance. And it's just, it doesn't follow any conventions, right? So when I talk about games in terms of a software design, right, if you sit down and use a game and it's like, oh my god, everything is ass backwards, and just why did they do it this way, why did they choose it that way, and just they're not leveraging any of a person's prior experience, and it's just there's more button clicks and more button presses than necessary to get things done. And things are just, poorly designed. Sometimes things are just poorly designed, like bad decisions, right? It could just be bad software design. Look at that as one of those, ancillary criteria. And then there's also the thematics. And why do I put thematics? Is because, it's, again, a lot of times there's just a lot of games are just the same damn thing with a different skin. But I mean, hey, you know what? You can have it's cosmetics, right? It's thematics. It's like, is it a zombie game? Like, there's zombie chess and regular chess and battle chess, and they're still the same game. The mechanics are still the same fucking game, but the thematics they can disguise that, right? They can disguise the mechanics and how good it is as an actual game, right? So I mean, it's thematics and cosmetics, and it's important to consider. Does the game merely stand out on its own because of the thematics? All right, and then is it good value? And when I say is it good value, is it a short but super intense game, or is it does it provide a long extended? Is it a durable experience where you can play hours and hours and hours on end, or is it a game which has shallow mechanics? And this is the problem I've noticed. There are games with shallow mechanics. You get used to the mechanics, and then there's like 15 holes, and I just don't feel like playing through all those levels. Like if I look at Doom, right? Doom is a game with very shallow mechanics, and I can play through a certain number of episodes, and then after that there's really nothing more to it. There's just more maps and that kind of thing. But at that point it's like I've had enough, right? It's just the map levels are just, the layouts are different, but the mechanics just don't seem to, it's become solution, it doesn't have any solution resistance. Right, so I say that just because if you have a game with a bazillion levels in it, it may not necessarily be good value, because you may just get used to the mechanics, and then the game becomes kind of bland to you. You're used to it, and it's just you don't feel like going through it. So that's an important thing. And so I say, how long can you play that game? My baseline benchmark is $1 an hour. And if the game, can't provide me $1 an hour of fun, meaning if it's a $20 game, it should give me $20 of fun. If it's a $60 game, better fucking give me $60 of fun. I look at a game like 7 Days to Die, 7 Days to Die, and that's a game which I think is like $15, and I many days in it. It was good value, right? It's good value. I play a game like Path of Exile, which is free to play. And then you only have to pay for like cosmetic things, and my god, I have a ton of hours in that. Well worth it. Diablo 3, I played like gazillion hours. I've laid like a gazillion hours in that. Same, and that was like a $50-$60 game. You look at Minecraft, it's like $30, but you know what? You sink hundreds of hours into it, so you know what? I can say, hey, I got my money's worth. Borderlands 2, fantastic value, right? Now, I say this with respect to the game being, for me. But just consider that. Is the game good value? And if it's not, then I think a review should say if it's good value. The review should say, it's a good game, but I think I'd wait for a Steam sale. All right, so look for that in a review. Anyway, this video is now almost half an hour long. There's obviously a shit ton to cover. I hope that other game reviewers will look at this and maybe consider the way in which they're going to judge games, and that game players and people who are looking to buy a game will look at this criteria as well, and maybe use that. And if they find that reviewers are just talking about the features in the game, but they're not actually giving any kind of quantifiable game analysis, they're not scoring them, they're not holding it to any kind of standard, then get on them, and or just don't support them, don't give them the ad clicks, and just talk about this stuff, and let's see some reform in the game journalism and game review industry. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.